The year was 1906. It was a time of great change and turmoil, a period marked by the clash of cultures and the struggle for power. South Africa, a land rich in history and natural beauty, was no exception to these upheavals. South Africa was a land of raw beauty, with its vast landscapes, majestic mountains, and untamed wilderness. The country was a tapestry of diverse cultures and traditions, each adding to the rich mosaic of its identity. But darkness lurked beneath its surface. The land, though beautiful, held secrets and shadows that whispered of ancient evils and untold horrors. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, a sense of foreboding that seemed to permeate every corner of the countryside. In a small mission school, a young woman named Clara Germana Cele prayed. She sought solace and guidance in her faith, hoping to find peace in the midst of the chaos that surrounded her. She was just 16, an orphan, raised by the nuns. Clara had known hardship and loss from a young age, but she had also found a sense of belonging and purpose within the walls of the mission school. Clara was known for her quiet piety. She was a model of devotion and humility, her days filled with prayer and service. The nuns admired her dedication and saw in her a bright future, one that would be dedicated to the service of God and the community. But something shifted that year. Something sinister took root. The once serene atmosphere of the mission school began to change, as if an unseen force had cast a dark, malevolent shadow over it. Clara's prayers turned to blood-curdling screams. She thrashed and convulsed violently, her body contorting in unnatural ways. The nuns were horrified. They had never seen such a terrifying transformation in someone so devout. The peaceful halls of the mission school were now filled with the sounds of Clara's torment. They had never seen such darkness in her eyes. The once gentle and kind Clara now seemed possessed by an otherworldly force, her eyes reflecting a malevolence that chilled the nuns to their core. Her gaze was empty, yet filled with an ancient, malevolent intelligence. Clara spoke with a voice that wasn't her own. It was deep and guttural, filled with anger and hatred. The words she uttered were in languages she had never learned, speaking of things that no one in the mission school could understand. Her voice echoed with a resonance that seemed to vibrate through the very walls. It spoke of things unholy and ancient. The nuns recognized some of the symbols and phrases from their studies of forbidden texts, but the full extent of the evil that had taken hold of Clara was beyond their comprehension. The air grew colder, and shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. The peaceful mission was now a battleground between good and evil. The nuns prayed fervently, seeking divine intervention to save Clara from the darkness that had consumed her. The struggle was intense, a spiritual battle that tested the faith and resolve of everyone at the mission school. The outcome was uncertain, but the nuns knew they had to fight with all their might to save the soul of the young woman they had come to love and care for. The very air seemed to crackle with the tension of the unseen battle raging around them. Word spread like wildfire. Clara's possession became a spectacle that terrified and fascinated. People traveled for miles to witness the horrifying spectacle. Some came with pity, others with morbid curiosity. But all who saw her agreed, something truly malevolent had a hold of Clara. Clara spoke in languages unknown to her. Zulu, her native tongue, was gone. In its place were Latin, French, and Hebrew, languages she had never learned. Her body contorted in ways that defied nature, twisting grotesquely. She hissed at holy water, recoiling from its touch as if burned by fire. The priests were called in. They had to intervene. They had to save Clara from the darkness within. The priests arrived to find the mission in utter chaos, the air thick with an oppressive, suffocating dread. Clara levitated above her bed, eyes blazing with an unholy, malevolent light that seemed to pierce through the very soul. Objects flew across the room with impossible, violent force, as if propelled by an unseen, malevolent hand. The air crackled with a sinister energy, thick with malevolence, making every breath feel like inhaling pure evil. This was not just a possessed girl. This was a demonic stronghold, a fortress of evil that seemed to pulse with dark, ancient power. The priests began their fervent prayers, voices trembling with fear and desperation, their words almost drowned out by the oppressive atmosphere. Incense filled the air, its smoke a desperate plea for divine intervention against the encroaching darkness, but it felt like a futile gesture. But the entity within Clara only laughed, a chilling, maniacal sound that echoed through the room, sending shivers down the spines of all present. It mocked their every attempt to exorcise it, reveling in their despair and feeding off their fear. It hurled vile insults in those ancient forbidden tongues, each word dripping with venom and malice. The battle had begun, and it felt as though the devil himself was holding all the cards, the room a battlefield of light and shadow, where faith and fear collide. South Africa in the early 1900s was a melting pot of cultures and beliefs. Traditional African spirituality existed alongside Christianity brought by the missionaries. This clash created an atmosphere of both faith and chilling fear. The lines between the spiritual and the physical were blurred, creating a haunting uncertainty. Clara's case tapped into this shared anxiety, amplifying the terror. It became a public spectacle, a horrifying display of the unknown. Some saw it as proof of the devil's terrifying power. Others saw it as a sign of God's wrathful judgment. Whatever their interpretation, one thing was clear: Clara's possession had shaken the community to its very core. The exorcism's grip. The exorcism lasted for days, each moment more harrowing than the last, as the air grew thick with an oppressive darkness. The priests, exhausted and terrified, chanted prayers and sprinkled holy water with trembling hands, their faces etched with fear and desperation. But the entity within Clara clung on with terrifying tenacity, its presence a palpable malevolence that seemed to suck the very light from the room. It hurled blasphemies and obscenities that chilled the blood, its voice a cacophony of rage and hatred. It threatened the priests with eternal damnation, its voice a guttural growl from the abyss, echoing with a sinister resonance. Clara's body became a battleground, her every movement a violent struggle against the unseen force, her eyes wild with terror. Her screams echoed through the mission, a chilling testament to the unseen war being waged, each cry a dagger of fear that pierced the soul. The priests refused to give up, their resolve hardening with each passing hour, their prayers growing louder and more desperate. They knew the stakes were high, the very air thick with dread and the scent of sulfur. Not just for Clara's soul, but for the very fabric of their faith, now tested by the darkest of evils, a malevolence that sought to consume them all. The mind's twisted labyrinth, a place where reality and illusion intertwine, creating a complex web of thoughts and emotions that can ensnare even the most rational minds, turning them into prisoners of their own nightmares, where every corner hides a new terror. Today, we look back on Clara's case with a different lens. In the early 20th century, her symptoms were seen as evidence of demonic possession, a belief deeply rooted in the cultural and religious context of the time, shrouded in fear and superstition, casting a dark shadow over her every action. Modern psychology offers alternative explanations for her possession: dissociative identity disorder, schizophrenia, and other mental health conditions that were not well understood back then. These disorders can cause a person to experience multiple personalities, hallucinations, and delusions, which might have been interpreted as signs of possession, adding a layer of horror to her already tormented existence, as if her mind was a battleground for unseen forces. Even epilepsy, a neurological disorder that can cause seizures and altered states of consciousness, could explain some of her symptoms. The convulsions and loss of control associated with epilepsy might have been mistaken for the physical manifestations of a demonic presence, a terrifying ordeal for anyone to endure, as if her body was being puppeteered by a malevolent entity. Could it be that Clara wasn't possessed by a demon but by her own tortured mind? The human brain is a powerful and mysterious organ, capable of creating vivid and terrifying experiences that feel all too real, trapping her in a personal hell, where every thought is a whisper from the abyss. Perhaps the trauma of her childhood, the loss of her parents, and the subsequent emotional turmoil created a break in her psyche. Childhood trauma can have long-lasting effects on mental health, leading to conditions like PTSD, anxiety, and depression, each a haunting specter in her mind, feeding on her fears and sorrows. The loss of her parents at a young age would have been a devastating blow, leaving her feeling abandoned and vulnerable. This profound grief could have triggered a psychological response, manifesting as the symptoms we now recognize as mental illness, a relentless ghost of sorrow, haunting her every waking moment. Created a break in her psyche, a fracture that allowed her mind to escape into a world of its own making. In this fragmented state, Clara's mind might have conjured up the idea of possession as a way to make sense of her suffering, a dark fantasy born from her deepest fears, where every shadow hid a lurking terror. Perhaps her possession was a manifestation of her own internal struggles, a desperate attempt to externalize the chaos within. By attributing her pain to an external force, Clara might have found a way to cope with the overwhelming emotions she couldn't understand or control, a chilling escape from her inner demons, where the line between reality and nightmare blurred. Projected onto the canvas of her faith, her experiences took on a religious significance. In a time when science and medicine were still in their infancy, religion provided a framework for understanding the inexplicable, a sanctuary from the horrors of the unknown, where the divine and the diabolical danced in the shadows. The lines between belief and reality can become blurred, especially when dealing with the complexities of the human mind. What we perceive as supernatural might be the echoes of our own minds, crying out for help. The mind's twisted labyrinth can trap us in a maze of our own making, where the boundaries between reality and illusion are constantly shifting, a nightmarish realm of endless terror, where every turn leads to deeper darkness. What we perceive as supernatural might be the echoes of our own minds crying out for help. In Clara's case, her cries were a plea for understanding, a desperate attempt to make sense of the turmoil within. As we continue to explore the depths of the human psyche, we may find that the true demons we face are not external forces but the shadows of our own minds, lurking in the darkest corners of our consciousness, waiting to be unleashed. A glimpse beyond the veil. This phrase evokes a sense of mystery, a sense of stepping into the unknown, where the boundaries between reality and the supernatural blur, and the shadows seem to whisper secrets of unspeakable horrors. The chilling mystery of Clara Germana Cele remains. Born in 1890, Clara was a young South African girl whose life took a dark and inexplicable turn. At the age of 16, she claimed to be possessed by a demonic entity, a claim that would haunt her and those around her for years to come, casting a sinister shadow over their lives, filled with nightmarish visions and eerie occurrences. Was she truly possessed by a malevolent entity, a force beyond our understanding, or was her torment a product of her own mind? The accounts of her behavior were both terrifying and perplexing. Witnesses reported that she spoke languages she had never learned, displayed superhuman strength, and exhibited knowledge of hidden things, as if an ancient evil had taken hold of her soul, twisting her very essence. Or was her torment a product of her own mind? Could it be that Clara's experiences were manifestations of psychological distress, misunderstood by those around her? The human mind is a labyrinth of thoughts and emotions, capable of creating both wonders and horrors, and in Clara's case, perhaps even summoning the darkness itself, a darkness that gnawed at her sanity. The answer, like the world we live in, is complex and multifaceted. The line between reality and illusion is often thin, and our perceptions can be easily swayed by fear, belief, and the unknown. In Clara's story, the line between sanity and madness was blurred, leaving a trail of fear and uncertainty, a trail marked by whispers in the dark and shadows that seem to move on their own. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between belief and skepticism. In the early 20th century, the world was a place where science and superstition coexisted uneasily. People sought explanations for the unexplainable, often turning to the supernatural when faced with the inexplicable, and in Clara's case, the darkness seemed all too real, a palpable presence that chilled the air and curdled the blood. The story of Clara Germana Cele serves as a chilling reminder of the power of the human mind and the mysteries that still linger in the shadows of our world. Her tale is a testament to the enduring fascination with the unknown, a fascination that continues to captivate us to this day, and a reminder that the darkness is never far away, always lurking just beyond the edge of our perception, and the mysteries that still linger in the shadows of our world. In every corner of the globe there are stories of the supernatural, of encounters with the otherworldly that defy explanation. These stories remind us that there is still much we do not understand about the universe and our place within it, and that the darkness may be closer than we think, waiting to envelop us in its cold embrace. It's a story that forces us to confront our own beliefs about the nature of reality. Are we alone in this vast universe, or are there forces at work that we cannot see or comprehend? Clara's story challenges us to look beyond the veil of our understanding and to question the very nature of existence, and to wonder if the darkness is watching us from the shadows, biding its time, and to ask ourselves, what if the things we fear the most are closer than we think? What if the boundaries between the known and the unknown are not as clear-cut as we believe? Clara Germana Cele's story is a haunting reminder that the veil between reality and the supernatural is thin, and sometimes it is lifted when we least expect it, revealing the darkness that lurks just beyond our sight, ready to consume us.